recording in progress. Do any of you see it? Or is that like a specific like update? Yes, okay. So it's
I
official.
just started the recording.
Oh, well, I mean, I was doing it, but thank you. Um, yes. All right, so welcome everybody. It's so nice to see so many faces today. Has makes everything more meaningful, at least to me. So yes, my name is here, Ferdinando Castro Gonzalez, alongside Yusha and Orlando. We are your officers today, making sure that you have a decent conversation and we all follow the same rules. Um, I know, sadly, we also have an advisor that is kind of like, here and there. Sometimes he says something good, sometimes he also says something good. You see? You see? You thought I was going to say something bad, but I didn't. He's quite helpful. He's quite helpful. I'm not gonna deny that. His name is Jeff Mancy. Whenever you feel like you don't know how to say something, he probably will be able to lead you. I'm gonna do a little bit of house rules here. For those who are new, please let me know if you have access to the chat. We normally use the chat to have a record of who's gonna speak first and last. And the way we do that, and if you chat, you normally write an exclamation mark. So you write an exclamation mark in the chat, as Yusha, I think he just did, and that way we know who goes first. If you raise your hand, even though I'm gonna be able to see you, like that's not how we roll because I don't know who's gonna be first and last. So just try to focus on the chat. And if you feel like in the shy area, you don't have to necessarily to speak. You can always just type it, and I will read it. Last week, I did a book, an audio book, of just reading the comments. So don't be worried. Like we will read everything that it goes there. I'm not gonna extend too much this introduction. I know that we have a special guest today, which her name is Chelsea Araceli Velez from Alas. Um, Achieving Latino success, something. Am I wrong? I'm probably wrong, but she will get it right.
Nope, you got it.
There
Latino
you go.
success.
There
Well,
you
actually,
go.
if I can just make a couple announcements before we get into it.
Yes,
Um,
that was my
yeah,
next
so,
one.
yeah. Let's welcome Chelsea here. Representative of Alice, Achieving Latino Academic Success. Glad to be here. She is going to provide us with some really interesting perspective on today's topic. And today's topic is, again, cultural integration in society. So our monthly theme of society comes to a close today. So this is the final culminating topic, as it were. We talked about what differentiates a society from, communities and clubs and stuff like that. And we progressed all the way to this point where we're talking about, again, specifically a theme that is, I would say, very much related to Alice and what they stand for as a club. But more specifically, the general idea of, again, how would a society such as America, which invites and celebrates multiculturalism, again, celebrates this sort of diversity, how does that sort of flesh itself out? How does that operate? How does it come together in a society? And what does that say about societies in general and perhaps our society in particular? Really quick though, just plugs, promotions. Again, tomorrow we will be hosting the final installment in our philosophy and film series. Again, it's going to be a unique screening. Rather than screening a full-length feature film, we're showing two strings of vignettes, cinematic vignettes. So I will present a tiny bit of context, and then we'll watch a string of small single scene or two scene, again, films, all strung together with the same characters for about 15 minutes. We'll have a conversation about it, and then we'll watch another set of, again, 4 to 5, again, cinematic, we'll just say expressions, in such a way where, again, we'll be able to dissect it even further, given what we talked about in the first discussion. So again, it's going to be fun. We're going to open up this chat right here, this particular team's page at 4 o'clock, begin the screenings at 4:30, probably wrap up by 6:30, if not sooner, because again, these are very quick, again, examples of philosophy and film. It's called We Don't Know, and it's of a piece with the theme that is society. More specifically, it's about the interstitials, the aspects of our lives that don't seem necessarily worthy of cinematic expression or cinematic, I suppose, investigation. But nonetheless, they comprise maybe 90% of our lives. So what these series of vignettes try to do is they try to put to camera the kinds of things that would typically happen off camera in major plot-driven movies, in a way to try to get at, again, individual integration into a society is maybe a good way to think of it. So please join us for that tomorrow. Again, we'll begin the screening at 4:30. And of course, last but not least, we have the Dallas College Philosophy Undergraduate Student Conference happening on Tuesday, April 27th. If you'd like to participate, if you'd like to, again, apply to have something showcased at the conference, I strongly encourage you to do so. It need not be strictly academic in form. I mean, if you want to submit an essay or a PowerPoint, that's perfectly acceptable. But if you want to be a bit more creative, again, we accept things like musical pieces, visual representations. We've had individuals in the past present on poetry, show their own poetry, things along these lines. So it could be it's very open-ended, very free-form. And again, if you're interested, I invite you to look at the files page on our Teams page right here and submit an application. You can find the application there, or just reach out to me or one of the Philosophy Club student officers. Yeah, we're accepting applications for the next couple weeks or so. And yeah, without further ado, thank you for sitting through those. Last but not least, look us up. I said that already. Look us up on social media. We're all over the place: Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. We have our own website. It's all good. All right, let's commence with the discussion.
Well, more than the discussion with the presentation. So, Chelsea, are you there? I think I missed. There you go. You move like a ninja one way to another. Okay. So yes. According to what I've been said, you have a presentation for us. So we will start with the presentation, and then our debate will be around what you present to us.
Okay. All right. So I'll begin right now. Well, hello, everybody. I joined the last meeting with the Anthropology Club. I think that was about 2 weeks ago. I introduced myself, but I'll introduce myself again. I'm here representing Alas, and I am the historian. A little bit of background about myself. I'm 20 years old. I've been in Richland College for 2 years now. My hobbies include walking my dog. I really love animals. Ice skating. It's a really It's a really good passion of mine. I've been really dedicated to it. And besides that, just doing a bunch of homework since I'm taking anatomy right now. So it's pretty hard, everything. Okay, so I'll begin with the discussion. So cultural integration, immigration is like a very popular subject, across like the whole world. When it comes to cultural integration, there can be a lot of different perspectives on that. So after I present, I mean, if it's okay with you guys, I was wondering if we could like go around like the chat or I guess the room and we could all like speak a little bit about what we think um, immigration and cultural integration could have in relation to each other and what aspects we have been through individually as a person, if that's okay with you guys.
Yeah, like that's how we roll. That will happen automatically.
Uh, all right, so as um Mexican American myself, I was not an immigrant, but I can't speak on behalf of my parents' story and all the struggles that they have been through and how it was for them to integrate in American society coming from a Mexican background, how it was for them like moving, transferring, having to deal with all of the different types of routines that people have in different countries. But right now I will be speaking from a Mexican perspective. So going back around the 80s is when my dad he received his engineering degree from electrical engineering and computer science. So he got 2 degrees, and he was in Mexico in the 80s, and he was receiving um, his residency status from an American company over there that he was working for in Mexico. I don't know the name of the company right now, but he received residency because it was an American company. So that's how he got like introduced to the idea. Later after that, he married my mom. He met my mom, and everything was going really well. Um, my dad decided to he would go there like every Saturday night. It's a very common thing in Mexico, going to the plaza, get your ice cream and all of that. So when my mom came here, she was like, "Wait, where's the plaza? Like everything's inside. Like there's no outside. Like everything is so segregated to the inside world. Like air conditioning, like schools, even the schools in Mexico, like you have your schools, but you always have the windows open because there's no air conditioning there. Unless you go to a private school, but that's not the case for everybody. So when my mom came here, she's like, "What?" Like she didn't like it. She wanted to go back. She was like, "I'm sorry. This is not the country that I imagined." So it was really devastating for my dad because he wanted to stay here and live the American dream, as most of us know and hear of. So unfortunately, my mom did stay. She never went back to Mexico. Then they fixed their citizenship and they stayed here permanently, just to go visit Mexico, visit the grandparents. But my mom did not like it. She was a little bit depressed. That's what she said. But I mean, at the end of the day, she likes it here. But dealing with the language, she said, was the hardest part. And till this day, her English is not perfect. So you never truly stop learning. Um, it was really hard for her to go to the mall and just like look around because she was used to the mall in Mexico was the plaza. But the plaza is outside where you buy ice cream, where you go talk to your cousins, your friends, where you see dogs walking around, where you see all these plants. And then you coming here, going to the mall where everything's inside and you start seeing all of these fancy Michael Kors, Chanel, Neiman Marcus, all of those stores. Like it was a cultural shock for her. And you could tell when someone is from Mexico or when someone is from a country that is not familiar from here. Like, and that's how my mom was. Like, she would like look around and she would be like, "Oh my God, like I live here now. Like, I have to deal with all of this now." So it was really hard for them, but they're here now and they're living well. And for me on the other hand, this is completely normal because this is how I grew up. And I believe most of you guys grew up. We grew up in this society and we were not really like well aware of how different cultures truly are in comparison to all of our culture. Does anybody have any questions so far?
I mean, no questions. We always have something to say, though. Um, but I mean, I do find fascinating the story, like how different perceptions can it be depending on the person, even though they come from the same culture. But you are mentioning like in the last statement, you were born here and you consider yourself to be an American, but still your family is from another country. So like I think like the way you perceive the world would differ from someone from a completely American family. I mean, just by having the Spanish background, you have access to a different way of thinking that probably somebody who only speak English would. Don't you think? Like I would rather like see like what do you think in that regard?
I think she might have froze up, guys.
For a moment, I thought it was me.
Yeah, I was thinking that too. I can
And
kind
like
of
I froze.
attest to that because I come from a similar background as she does. My parents immigrated here, though my parents actually immigrated here illegally. I'm not gonna get my story up, but interestingly enough, the way I see it
911.
is It's kind of like the idea of cultural integration, where basically it's like my parents grew up a certain way of thinking in Mexico coming here, and they saw America differently than I did. So in a sense, it's like this sort of hybrid part that I played between being Mexican and being American. It's like that in and of itself is a different culture. It's often referred to by Mexicans as the Chicano culture. And it is interesting because I think you see that with a lot of different other cultures that you see like their second born child who's born here in America is like they sort of retain a little bit of what their culture is, but then create something new. And so that's where you get like all the different kinds of I guess flavors of humans and different cultural diversity here in America. Um, so.
Okay, okay. Yes, I know how to get some points now from Icy. No, but without joking aside, I see that Mansi has his like exclamation mark there. So I don't know if you wanted to address something regarding what we were talking right now. If not, I can just continue.
Yeah, I would. Again, I appreciate Chelsea's story there, the narrative, the perspective. Yeah, it's right for me. And so I guess I'll pose it to Orlando because he's making many of the same points and kind of helping kind of flesh out this idea here of again cultural integration, uh, maybe from the previous generation especially. But my question is about I guess the current generation. It sounds like Orlando, you're first generation, and it sounds like Chelsea also first generation. Um, and so I suppose I'm wondering, there does seem to be an element of sacrifice, or at the very least risk that goes into a family, coming here to America, to follow the examples we're using here. Um, and I wonder if that in some way amounts to a certain kind of pressure put on generation raised in this new, again, country. Um, and I ask that because it seems like the pressure might be to sort of make good on the promise and opportunities that one's relatives, parents, grandparents, what have you, provided for you. They provided one with opportunity. But it also seems like in order to sort of maybe make good on that opportunity and really succeed in tangible ways, one is kind of encouraged to assimilate. One is encouraged to adopt maybe the custom of one's local American neighborhood, as opposed to maybe necessarily remaining 100% faithful to the cultures and customs of uh, one's previous generation's native land. And so I'm wondering here. I mean, is that a thing? Again, I don't know. I'm third generation, so I'm pretty removed. But is there a certain kind of pressure that comes with that, where you're kind of torn between wanting to maintain the values and traditions of your family, but also being like, well, if I do want to sort of make good on their wager for me moving forward, it behooves me to sort of Americanize myself even more so than maybe my parents or guardians. What do you think?
Yes, I think I was about to say something in around that area, because I mean I am not born here. I came here past having more than 20 years like outside this country. But like I know that for example I'm assuming since I didn't leave that. But for people maybe like Orlando and Chelsea who you have your parents who have probably been discriminated just by being from to grow up like I'm feeling like you belong is it probably must be weird because the people that you like look up to and like they're protecting you are also being faced toward a certain type of discrimination that you like not necessarily have directly but it is affecting you. So I believe that that is the reason why probably like in this case Orlando tend to have a more like vision of like like I don't know how to phrase it, but like more libertarian ways because you kind of like it probably you go against the whole view that was affecting you like in during your youth, so it does affect how you perceive your country because it was affecting you um when you were a child. So like how much a person who was born here can even assimilate his own culture when it's affecting the direct culture of those who were like make like growing you, like they were developing the man or the woman you are today. It's just a thought. And I know Yusha is next, but after Yusha, Chelsea is back, so she can continue the presentation because I think she has more to say. But yeah.
Hey, thanks. I mean, great discussion. I agree with what Chelsea and Orlando had to say because me myself, I'm an immigrant, and but not in the typical sense, as most of you know. I've moved around a lot before coming to the U.S., so I think it would be an interesting take to have a discussion between someone who's like me, who's traveled a lot away from his own culture and someone who's directly been introduced to the American culture from their own culture.
Conference proposal.
Of course. Of course, yeah. By the way, Isra is going to be at the conference. She was asking about the times I told her to email you. Go ahead, Chelsea. Sorry.
It's fine. Sorry, guys. My phone got disconnected for a little bit, but I'm back. To continue my presentation, another very important factor that most immigrants experience when coming to this country is a cultural shock. Like, I'll give you one example. One time I asked my mom and my dad about this, and they explained to me a very different cultural shock that is normal here, but not normal in other countries. For example, one time they were eating at this restaurant, I don't remember where. And my mom told me that out of nowhere, the waiter brings the check. And the waiter just left it in the table. And my mom and my dad were like, oh my God, what? Because it is the custom in Mexico that you ask for the check. They don't bring you the check because that is considered to be rude and they want you to leave. You have to ask for the check until you're done eating and until you're done talking, until you're done enjoying the moment. But it's not something that is done here. As most of you guys have probably gone out to eat, they bring you the check after you get your dessert. But you're still talking, but it's like a sign that, it's time for you to go. Oh, it's time for you to pay and go. Well, no, not in other countries. Well, specifically Mexico. You have to ask for your own check. It's not something that, it just comes because it's a sign of disrespect and it's incredibly rude. So it's something that I didn't even know. And I go to Mexico all the time, but I've never really paid attention to the small things like that. But my parents did. And they were saying earlier, yeah, there is some kind of pressure when it comes to coming to a country like the United States. There is a pressure because you have to, in a way, assimilate to the people that live here. It can be a bad thing. It can be a good thing. It depends on the own person, But, assimilation is something that most people go through. You have to assimilate. Oh, you live here now, but you're Mexican, or you're from Brazil, you're from Colombia. Okay, but you live here now. So you have to act, or you have to look, you have to dress, you have to eat what the people here eat. So yeah, to answer the question, yeah, there is some amount of pressure when it comes because you don't exactly know how to behave in a way. If I wear this dress, this cultural dress, is it okay for me to wear it, or am I gonna get a weird stare every now and then? It's a big amount of pressure.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, just to give, thank you for responding to my question there. Again, it's I'd like to hear from others as well, but yeah, I mean, especially when you think about it in the context of being a student in higher education, there does seem to be a very strong incentive to I mean, I suppose one example could be practicing your English really well in order to communicate clearly with everybody around you, to, enhance uh, your prospects for succeeding in your classes. But, I mean, that might be, at odds with, the language that's preferred for you to speak at home. I mean, that depends. I mean, I remember my mom telling me there was because she was the oldest of five, second generation, and her parents, my grandparents, made a conscientious effort to make sure that they didn't speak Italian, that they didn't know the language so that they couldn't speak it, so that they could be more fully integrated. Now, Yusha raised the question in the chat, is there a difference between integration and assimilation? That's a good question. I'd like to hear everyone's thoughts on that.
Okay. Even though I have something to say, I know Orlando, you have your first when it comes to speak right now. So go ahead.
I kind of just want to talk about kind of what Manzi was asking about the pressure. For me, being born to two parents who were both immigrated here, I think generally for most, American people who are born here and have parents who already are in tone with the culture, they sort of are guided in a certain sense to understand the culture. You kind of have this journey where, yeah, these are the norms. I'm used to this with my family. I can do this with literally most people around me. For me, coming with parents that, they themselves didn't really understand the culture. They themselves didn't really have that much guidance for me in the culture of America. I kind of had to find my own journey through it. And aside from that, you're kind of looking to the people to guide you to say, okay, well, what should I do in this instance? And to some extent, they just don't know. My mom, she doesn't really know English. My dad's the only one who actually does know English. And there is some pressure also because it's like, although they don't force the pressure on me to say, hey, you need to succeed after all the sacrifice we've given you, I subconsciously automatically feel it. Like, man, they've given up so much. They went through so much just to get here. I feel like I have to do something for them. And it's not even something that's just conscious, it's something that's it just is. And it's something that I noticed it not from like my teenage years, but earlier on and like maybe when I was like 7 or 8, I just felt it. And I don't know if it's something that I'm sure this is something that other people can feel that come from like maybe a lower income family, and so like they understand that they want to succeed for their parents. But this is just a simple perspective for me coming from immigrants. As I feel that's sort of in the back of my mind, sort of like this overlooming thing that's just always there, and it makes me wonder. Like I'm not the only one going through this. I know there's other people from different nations that come here that go through the same thing. Also, when you really think about things like stress, for actual people who immigrate here and don't have citizenship or residency, maybe just here for school, it's very difficult for them to find jobs that pay a decent wage. Often people take jobs for half wage. Often people don't have rights in these jobs. So these are just added stress on top of the idea of me being a student, me wanting to learn, wanting to do better, and they have to live with this through their everyday life. And so for me, I kind of admire that of them because a lot of the people that do immigrate here and are in school, are really hardworking people. And so, yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that's yeah, exactly. Thank you for sharing.
Quick question.
And
Okay. Does Orlando, everybody else who finds themselves in a similar position, does that pressure impact the major you decide on or the field of study, to the point where even if you maybe have interests in other fields of study, you maybe there's pressure to select ones that are more practical, that will generate income maybe more quickly?
Yes.
I think so too. The reason I think so too is, I think so, but at the same time, I don't think it's just for this firstborn, because I think people in general in America, we live in a society that idolizes money. So I think I think a lot of people can share that sort of, sentiment.
That could be
yeah, I
part
mean, okay. No, I agree. I mean, I guess it depends on how you immigrate. But I think like what Orlando feels is very common and among international students, for example. Um, like with I for some reason we feel like we don't have the luxury of just being. Like for us to actually have some sort of like a shot at, in this country to maybe have like a better prospect of life, like we are basically pushed socially to prove why we are more worthy than others. You were saying that maybe like low income families may have also that drive, but I think that that's not necessarily true. I think that's true for you because you saw what how like what it can do to your family to have a specific like discrimination. But in this case, like I see many families who are like low income and I mean they're chilling because I feel like their issue is not regarding of who you are, but like how money you can make. I don't know if that makes sense. And sometimes even if you make a lot of money, you still are perceived weirdly. I remember, and this was like my second semester in Richland. There were a couple of like students who are from here, and they were all like asking me like, "Hey, I don't understand. Like, how is it that all the international students that I know are so smart and so like whatever?" And it's like, no, like I think it's about the same. Honestly, like the only thing is like we have to do it. Like some other people, like like we have like our tuition is more like we have like if we're not succeeding they can just take you out from the country like we have to do it like you if you don't do anything really like what is the worst that can happen you just are not studying but you can just return anytime you can in your case you just get your visa removed you see so there are different aspects and I said to them like listen like I'm sure that those students from this country that goes to the exterior they will be having similar attitudes of those who immigrate to this country. And the other aspect that I was seeing, and I think Chelsea was mentioned that, like in this country, we expect people to know English. But whenever at least you go to Venezuela, even though you don't speak Spanish, just by not speaking Spanish, you're kind of regarded as someone exotic, and they kind of like it, like this. Oh my God, and they kind of like try to butcher the language, So they are more acceptive of who you are based on your different background, and they actually want to like feed with you even though they are in your country like they are in your territory but they are the one trying to feed you so what exactly is it in this culture that this culture is the one like kind of like forcing even outside their boundaries of people having to fit into the criteria and other countries just accept it like how did they like came into this country I know that this case will diverse country by country. Like some other countries, just like we are ourselves and But I do think, at least in various Latin American countries, that like at least with the English, they will try to prove themselves that they can speak it because subconsciously that means that you are like, a little bit more like educated which is not the same with English. They speak English and they may only speak English and they feel like they're good. And in other countries, you speak like five, six, seven languages and you still have to prove yourself with English. So just a thought. And I think the next person to speak is Osita.
Hi. Okay. Hi. Yeah. I guess just to like reference what you just like asked, I had something else to say, but I'll just answer that. What I think is the reason why Americans are they're so they're so concerned that you speak English. My guess is that America is a relatively young country, so maybe it's a little bit of a uh, what is it? They're a bit not jealous, but like they don't have like very storied and long pasts that other countries have. Maybe they're a bit more like other countries. I feel like are a bit more secure in who they are. So if someone wants to come in and speak, whatever, it's like okay, that's fine. But America, I'm guessing, this is how I view it, is we like to think of ourselves, right, as a melting pot. And so our culture is sort of based on you buying into this contract that is the Constitution. The culture really isn't based on where you're born or just, living in being a Hungarian for 1,000 years or whatever. No one's been an American for 1,000 years or whatever, but there are countries out there where they go back hundreds and thousands of years. So since the culture is sort of based on buying into this, I don't know, I guess American contract, part of that, as I guess Americans would see it, is speaking the English language. And it is very American to say, look, like a good joke is like, look, we call our Super Bowl champions world champions. They don't play anyone else in the world, So it's like, look, we speak English here. Why do you need to speak anything else? It's America. What are we doing here with any other language? That's how I would view it. But I guess I would say I'm also an immigrant, so I'll come at it from that view. But I was born here. I was born in America, so I'm first generation. So I'm not an immigrant. I'm the children of immigrants. But even some of my brothers weren't born in America. They were born I'm from Nigeria. They were born in Nigeria, so we just came here as like my parents were having children. I guess my dad came to school here and became an engineer and then switched careers and blah blah blah. But I would say, for me personally, assimilating, has been easy because I was born in America. What's sort of the hard part is keeping my Nigerian culture intact and keeping that alive. So it's harder for me to do when I don't have, all of my cousins are still in Nigeria. So we don't really have, I can get American, I was raised in American culture, but as I'm getting older, I'm finding it more important to sort of keep the Nigerian culture alive in this country, for my children or just for myself, just for the sake of not letting it die out or whatever. It's not going to die out as a whole country, but you know what I mean. I want to hang on to that because it was easy for me I was raised as an American, and I guess sort of tying into that, sort of like what Professor Manzi said. There's this thing with Nigerians, and this isn't the case with all immigrants, right? But with Nigerians, a lot of Nigerians, my age, like 20s or 30s, who came here, who were children of those immigrants who came here back in the 70s and 80s. None of us know Igbo. None of us know that's the name of our language. None of us know it because our parents wanted us to assimilate or integrate so badly that they wouldn't even teach. They would speak amongst themselves, of course, but they wouldn't teach their children Igbo. And none of us in our age group knows it. And it's very sad. I think a lot of us are very sad. We're all trying to take classes now when we're all older and stuff, and it's hard to find classes as it is because, we can speak English, but we would like to be able to speak Igbo and teach our children. We don't want to have to go back to Nigeria and it's sad to lose that culture. But yeah, I've been lucky. I've always felt like I'm an American citizen, so I guess I've gotten lucky where of course you feel like an outsider, but I've just gotten lucky. A lot of people, I've gotten lucky to be around accepting people and things like that I've never, you feel like an outsider, but it's not something that I think that has created, it hasn't gotten to the level where it's created an ROC within me. But yeah, I can keep going, but I'll let other people talk and I'll circle back. Yeah.
No, that's fine. And yeah, I'm liking to see that a lot of people are going really, even personal. And I think it's important because we all are from very different backgrounds, and we were better able to assess this is something that affects us similarly. We just happen to face it differently based on what we hold as values. But okay, Pamela, you are next. And Pamela, you're muted.
Oh, okay. Um, I guess like what my train of thought was also kind of going with Osito, is that your name?
Oh, no,
Yeah,
Osita. Don't worry. I
Osito,
also
sorry.
feel like it's like a naming a female, but no,
Yeah, no,
that's her
it's fine.
name, Osita.
Yeah, it's Osita. Growing up in Texas and being around Spanish speakers, I've gotten a lot of crap for having that name.
Oh
But
no,
yeah.
no, it's an adorable name.
See,
Like,
that's the thing. I don't want an
like
adorable name.
m-
That's the problem.
my nickname as a child, like this is the thing. My nickname as a child was Osito Revoltoso, and Osito is like tiny bear,
Yeah.
but Osita is tiny female bear. So whenever I see Osita, like the first thing I was thinking is like it's a girl, but then I hear like hello, my name is Osita. Oh, okay, completely wrong. It's like completely wrong. But yeah, don't worry.
Yep. But it's just yeah, no, I think me and you had the same train of thought of like, trying to keep the whole your culture that, your parents raised you alive and everything. Cause like right now one of my cousins, she's like 6, 7, and she's refusing to speak Spanish all of a sudden. So it's that idea of like, yeah, you live here and everything. I also lived here and everything. I'm like first generation that's gonna um you know uh be a citizen and everything. So it's the idea of like trying to keep your family roots alive, and also like I guess be learn to be proud of it and everything. Because like most of the time, you think that the American dream's all like diversity and everything, and then you have everything that's going on right now, and it's just like you as you grow older, you realize the American dream is very much dead. So
Yeah. I mean, I did came to this country without even. I mean, I didn't even wanted to be in this country in the first place. But that's beyond the point. I just remember something that Sita mentioned, and that it did happen to me when I was speaking to one of my friends in Venezuela. Um, like for him was something to be proud and to be happy that I have not changed my accent when I speak Spanish, which for me was interesting because it's like, why would I change my accent? And it's like, I don't know, like you sound the same as you live, and I'm just happy to hear your voice like being the same. It's like for me that's crazy, but I mean it does. I mean it does speak, and sometimes even how integrated can it be? Because I mean you are changing how you speak, like in your own tongue language. Anyways, I think Yusha is next. Yeah, Yusha is next.
Hey, yeah, I'm just gonna take it back to Orlando's point a bit about international students because two of my sisters are international students, and yeah, it is very different when it comes to them being employed, being able to afford school and whatnot. Because see, there's some scholarships that are available to non-international students only, and others are available to international students only. Same goes for employment because I work at an immigration law firm, and without an employment authorization document, you're not even allowed to work in the United States. So my sisters were lucky enough to get full rides to whichever college they're going to, and other students who are not so lucky, they usually work on cash. I mean, without employment authorization, and eventually they get caught, and that becomes a sole reason for them being deported. Now, this being on purpose or just by a fluke of chance, we don't know. But yeah, it is very difficult for people who come here without a way to become naturalized. And the second thing that I'm going to touch base on is we were talking about names, just Osida's name just now, and that's another thing that struck me is sometimes we move to a new country or a new place or a new culture or something like that, and the first thing we do is change our names. Why? To fit the other country's pronunciation or whatever. And my dad is subject to it. I'm not. My friends are subject to it because his name, one of my friends, his name is Mohammed, and he calls himself Mo because it's easier for the American people to pronounce it. It's the same thing with my dad. So my name is Yusha Quraishi, and that's how I go by. I correct any person who is like pronouncing it wrong or something like that because that is part of my culture. I I I was born in Pakistan, and then I grew up in Saudi Arabia. Then I moved to other Middle Eastern countries for education, for work and stuff. Then I moved to Europe for a while, and then I came here. And people were so surprised, like first year when I got into college and whatnot. My professors, like, those introduction first class things. Okay, state your name, where you're from, blah blah blah. And I was like, hey, I just moved here, like 6 months back, and yeah, I speak perfect English, better than most English speaking people. And my professors were like, wow, how's that? Did you study and whatnot? Because the officers and I were discussing yesterday that some people take influence of the Western culture into their own home country. Like Ferdinand was telling me that in Venezuela, they have people who prefer speaking English, dressing like Americans, doing business like Americans, eating American food a lot, and that kind of stuff. So that got me thinking that, hey, that's some portion of it happens to all of us even before we realize it. Like we see in the movies that, oh, hey, for example, Batman, when he's not Batman, he's dressing up so nice and proper and whatnot. So we try to dress the same way. But that is a culture from somewhere else. And this this kind of integration is well and good, but I think when it gets dangerous is when we start to lose the fine line between integration and assimilation. And the difference between the two is that integration is me accepting another person's culture and vice versa. Like I'm in America right now, right? And I have to abide by their culture, even though after 4 years, I'm still not sure if America has a culture or not because it's been a huge mixing pot for over 100 years. There's been so many cultures introduced that nothing concrete is set for the American culture. Like if you go to England, the English culture is tea, crumpets, dressing nice, talking politely, opening doors for others, kind gestures, and some stuff like that. But here I have to adapt to what goes on here, just like I would adapt to any other country. And that, in my opinion, is integration. And assimilation is when I completely forget about who I am, what my culture teaches me, and adopt to a new culture. As was done with the Indians. If you look at New Zealand, England did the same with New Zealand. They're native people. Same thing with Australians. English did that to the Australians as well. And this kind of stuff is actually interesting to me because people willingly assimilate because they think their own culture is below another culture. So I think this would be a good thing to talk about and get some feedback from other students.
Can I say something really quickly?
Sure, sure.
Um, so yeah, I totally agree with you and everything that you just said. I have a perfect example for that, and I can't believe I didn't think about it earlier today. But in high school, I was in this charter school called IOT. It's in Garland. Anyways, we had international students because it was like a chain of different students throughout like different countries. Like we had people from Spain, from China, and of course the people that live here in Garland. But our international students from China, when they came here, my charter school gave them the option. Well, I don't know if it was an option, but I know that they had designated American names. So my friend, different international students, I didn't even know their real name because I would call them by their American name. And it's just so weird how, that totally like correlates to everything that you just said. Like, oh yeah, you have to get an American name. You have to assimilate. You have to fit in with the culture here. Because I'm not going to call you Yu Shui when your name is Leslie. Because you live here now. You go to school here now. So now your name is Leslie. So I think it's a really good point that you pointed out. It's a very common thing that most international students have to go to.
Okay, good. Loving it. I'm just gonna move the gear toward Orlando like very quickly. Just for the time being. But yeah, I'm loving the discussion so far. But Orlando, you're next.
I mean, there's a lot of things said there, and I kind of asked myself then, like, what you guys were kind of asking. I think I'm not sure who originally asked it, but why is it that this seems to be like a common theme in the U.S.? You know, like why is it that like for most people they are expecting you to know English and you feel like you have to change your name, and in a sense, kind of sort of fix your identity to that extent, which is kind of crazy. But it also makes me wonder, you know, does this happen in other countries? When you go to a different country and you have a hard name to pronounce, wouldn't you then change it as well, or would you fix it to their country as well? You know, I might be ignorant to that, but it also makes me think of like countries like Brazil, where they're so also culturally diverse, and when you compare it to the U.S., they're very similar in that sense, but yet in Brazil, things like race aren't really a problem. You know, often you have different people with different skin tones, and you refer to them as, oh, he's dark, he's black, he's this and that, but it's not a racial thing. It's more just a description. But here, it's sort of identified with kind of this racial turmoil. And it makes me kind of think of this psychologically, where it's like maybe with the background of the U.S. having its socioeconomic, you know, like slavery, sort of this racial history, and you compare it to that of Brazil, who kind of the slavery kind of went away faster than in the U.S. Maybe that adapted and it formed in a different kind of society, so that cultural integration was much more accepted than assimilation. So that you have music like samba, where it's like a mix of African style and sort of Mediterranean style, and you have these different kinds of cultures that created from that. Versus the U.S., where it's like because of its past and its sort of linear dictation and stayed that way for a very long time. And then you had certain structures that were racially based, like Jim Crow law. Because all these things were maintained in that society, the attitude of the majority of the people was American culture is English. American culture has to be this, has to be that. And sort of, instead of being like a growth, sort of like Brazil is, it's sort of a fixed.
I see. Great points. Nancy, you're next.
Hey, yeah, fantastic conversation. I mean, I was going to introduce a somewhat of a different point in terms of just how cultural integration happens and maybe what some of the deeper, more fundamental challenges are. At the same, you know, so I kind of wanted to veer towards fundamental values of cultures. And again, if you know, a place like America, again, very, very much pluralistic in its cultures. Again, the diversity is something that is supposed to be celebrated. Uh, it's it's you know easier sounding perhaps than it might actually be in practice because of the different maybe religious again foundations of certain cultural practices that may not be necessarily completely compatible with others. But rather than go there, I want to or feel free to comment, but I would say this: it sounds like based upon what everybody's saying, there might be this kind of unique existential element to cultural integration of a particular generation. Um, because again, I'm hearing a lot of, you know, not wanting to sort of lose touch with one's roots. But again, if one is born here and, you know, like Osita's example, one is encouraged to, I suppose, not even learn the language for the sake of future flourishing, I suppose. Think of where that leaves somebody. I mean, one is trying to, in terms of like an identity, almost an identity crisis, where one is trying to identify with one's culture uh, for one's previous generations, you know, one's parents and one's ancestors, but one doesn't even know the language, or one is being encouraged to not maybe be so expressive in that way. So one actually doesn't have any connection to one's, again, cultural roots, but then one is also kind of a stranger here. One is trying to assimilate in ways that aren't necessarily smooth, we could say. So it's kind of like one is caught in the in-between. Am I American first? well, I was told to speak English first, and I speak English in most places, but or am I my ancestry first? Well, I want to be that, and I want to preserve that here in America, for example. But at the same time, I've never experienced it directly, you might think. So then that, it's like, well, who am I? I think that's the existential element that I think is coming up here. And I just kind of wanted to make it, render it explicit, because that's a very challenging position to be in, where one isn't exactly sure what the predominant influence in one's sense of self is. Right? I mean, I'm curious. Does anybody else does this resonate, and maybe I'm not seeing things necessarily as one's experienced them, but that seems to be my takeaway from the conversation happening right. There does seem to be this dichotomy, or this just this almost a disconnect, where there's two parts of who we are, and we're trying to fuse them together in a way where, if we're feeling the pressure, it's assimilation.
Okay.
No, yeah, I totally agree with that, because as I mentioned, a person who's traveled as much as I have from a very young age because of my dad's business, I often find myself asking, to which culture do I belong to? And because I do things from almost everywhere, like I have a tea time, which is the English culture. I prefer eating like burgers for breakfast, which is, you can call it American culture, I guess. I mean, I'm wearing a cowboy hat, so that's one thing. I'm only lack of a horse. I still have the Arabic culture, where I greet my adults with a certain level of respect as the culture demands. And, I find myself doing these things from all of the different places that I've experienced. And it often makes me like kind of stand out and be individualized, but in a good sense, that I don't feel like, oh, hey, everyone's looking at me weird. You know, People often come to me like, oh, hey, you know so much about so many different things. Like, what do you do? And blah, blah, blah. It's an entirely different conversation starter. So I think people who have traveled to other places before coming to the US, or experienced other cultures before coming to the US, would also agree to the fact that we, by hook or by crook, are existentialists to some point.
Can I add to that real quick?
Yeah,
Sorry.
but before you do something, like I noticed that Barbara wanted to add something to that question, and I just don't know if she wants
Oh,
to still
mine is
do
going
it.
to be quick. It is. I pretty much agree with what professor said. I I wasn't born here in the U.S. and I grew up in Venezuela up till I graded high school. So I thought that when I came here, I would be like 100% Venezuelan. But at the same time, I feel like I live in this in between, because my parents don't know English and they relate with people who are Venezuelan more than I do. And it is like living in this weird limbo space. And even if I'm not American, I feel like I definitely being influenced by the culture around me more than the Venezuelan culture, at least in these past few years that I've been here. So that's the only thing that I was going to say. Thank you for letting me speak that second.
And you're welcome. Thank you for being wanting to speak. Okay, Orlando, go ahead.
Okay. I was gonna say, like, basically something very similar. It's just like, it feels like whenever you grow up in a culture, I guess for me, because Mexican culture, it's just like, that's just my foundation. Like, that's just what I used to identify at a very, very early age. But I think as I grow forward, and I think people who are open-minded are the same, is like, you kind of start to notice other things of other cultures that you admire and that you kind of like and that you want to subscribe to. For some people, they idealize America and say, okay, I want to be American. And then when they realize, oh, it's not what they thought, oh man, now I don't know what I want. Oh, now, am I American now? Am I Mexican? But it doesn't just end there, because if you think about what's popular right now, you have things like K-pop, K-dramas, you have a lot like anime, a lot of different Asian sort of cultural things are here in the US, and because people are open to them, because people like them, because those cultures have things that are worth admiring of, and that's the same for all cultures. So I don't think it's necessarily anything bad to essentially admire and notice good things of cultures. And I think inevitably the U.S. is kind of leading towards that path of it's just a culture of of many different cultures. And I'm not quite sure how to explain that, but
Okay, thank you. I know Sita wants to say something, so I'm just gonna let him speak. So then I can like prepare to read quite a bit. Yeah, go ahead, Sita.
Yeah, thanks. So I have, this is just me personally, but I'll challenge anyone who is maybe a soccer fan to do the same thing. I have a personal like integration litmus test for myself, and it's if Nigeria and the United States were both playing in the World Cup final, who would I cheer for? And when I was younger, it was Nigeria, but as I've gotten older, it's like shifted more and more to America. I can't believe I'm saying that, but it's true. I don't know because yeah, Africa does. Anyway, but like we need a championship in Africa. But no, but it is. So assimilation is one of those hard things, right? I mean, well, I don't know, assimilation or integration. I've always thought of. I'll go integration. So I've always thought of assimilation as something that you're either forced to do or you're doing against your will, or like, they're either gonna come in and like rearrange the populace, I guess to put it nicely, after a war, and you will be assimilated one way or another, or if for some reason you find yourself in a different country but you don't want to assimilate, but it's still, I think with both assimilation and integration, I think it's simply a survival mechanism. It might be something that we even do like unconsciously, like you just do it just to get by, because if you're singled out as an outsider, I mean, that's just dangerous historically, like evolutionarily wise. Like if you're not a part of like, the chimpanzee troop, like they'll probably kill you. So you want to like fit in. So I think that's almost instinctual. Maybe it takes like more of a concerted effort to not assimilate and or integrate. But yeah, I know from I guess my own personal story, it was, it's weird. At the beginning, since I'm Nigerian, anyway, since I'm Nigerian, I'm black. But I remember as a kid, whenever I would try to hang out with black kids, they would kind of look at me and say, well, you talk white. And it's because, my parents, they went to like English boarding schools, and they're so that I couldn't, this is how like I couldn't change, how I could speak. So I was like, I kind of was like by default forced to hang out with like white kids, and like, so I guess that's a weird assimilation story, because like I've always sort of felt like an outsider. And I say that like, again, I've had a good life, so I can't complain and say like, oh, it's terrible, like no one ever accepts me. It's like, yeah, I've always been an outsider amongst like sort of any group. I guess I'm just hang out with Nigerians my own age or something like that. Even if I hang out with like older Nigerians and my cousins back home, I'm an outsider. I'm the one who went to America, Nigerians here, yeah, maybe, but I don't remember where I was gonna go. I did want to like call back to one. Actually, never mind. I won't do that. Yeah, I won't do that. Yeah, I'll let someone else talk. That's all I want to say right now.
Okay, thank you for sharing. I mean, I must say, like, if you're already going for USA in soccer team, you are completely assimilated. Like, there is no question about it. Mm-mm. I mean, plus Nigeria has such a better team. Just saying.
Well, you would think. Look, our under 21, they're always like doing really well, and then something happens like at the I don't know, the full whatever league, where like we always get out of group stage. I don't know, it's corruption. Like
you
I know what
always
it
get
is,
Argentina.
but...
Like you always get Argentina in the
Right.
group stage. That's almost ridiculous. I don't understand. It's like Argentina and
last
Croatia. It seems fixed at this point. It's like, come on. But I mean, you still was kind of like rocket. Isn't it I think it's either Nigeria or Cameroon who has the oldest player ever to play in the World Cup. It's one of those. But you have a very like fast team. I like it. But yeah, United States. I mean, they had it so easy to get into the World Cup. It's almost. I'm not gonna go that way. I'm not saying this.
But we
You
can't.
are
We
completely
haven't
assimilated right now.
like we haven't qualified for like the past like two World Cups or something. Like we just missed qualifications for the Olympics. Like the United States is so garbage that you have to just
Yeah,
for
but
underdog
but your
status. You have
but
to.
your country will skip work. Like the whole nation will be at stall when your team
Yes,
plays. Like here,
that is
there's like,
true.
oh, is soccer team playing? Huh. Okay, it's not basketball, so I don't care. It's like, oh my god, get the f out of here. Like no.
Or
Oh
football.
well, yes,
Very true.
or football. But anyways, you did mention something, and I think that's not necessarily just fixed to this country. In my case, I don't know why, and this is something that is still possible till today. For some reason, when I was a kid, and still, I mean, it was true all throughout my time in Venezuela. But people from Venezuela were always wondering whether I was from Colombia or Brazil because they thought that my accent was different from a Venezuelan. That made me feel so weird. Like it's like I'm Venezuelan. I never went outside or even the capital. And you're telling me that I don't speak my own the only Spanish that I've learned for my whole life. That was insane. Like for me, that was something that I didn't understand why. And when I came here to the United States, they are actually when I speak identifying me as Venezuelan. So I am by my speech pattern, I'm more recognized outside my country than in my country, which I think is fascinating. But well, beside that, um, I at this point I'm forced to read this one because I have read it all the time. So Osita he wrote lol, so I have to say it. So it's tradition now. Every time that you write lol, I have to read it. So so you also continue saying that uh, I knew a kid in high school, Vietnamese. His name is, I'm not even going to try to say it. I still feel bad for him. Oh, right. Yeah,
Say it.
yeah.
Say it.
No, no,
Say
no.
it.
Pronounce
Actually,
fruits.
like I wasn't even like I wasn't making the connection. I was not trying to mention because I knew I was gonna butcher it. Now it's because got completely different connotation. Anyway, then Lucas, he's saying thank you, Chelsea, for your presentation. I really enjoyed listening to you all. Great discussion. I appreciate everyone sharing their point of view. See you next week. Then Barbara, she said that that also happened to my dad. His name is Jorge. I'm gonna say it in Spanish, otherwise it will be George. But since people struggle with the pronunciation, he goes by with George, which is the English
You
version
kind
of
of
it.
nailed it.
Yeah. I mean, hey, I didn't read this before. Like it was completely natural. All right. So then Ravi, she says, I have also had a lot of people ask where I learned to speak English. I've always found it very strange. Some have been surprised that I know how to use a microwave. Mm. There is need for better education about the world and the different cultures we interact with daily. George says sometimes people at Starbucks or similar places write Jorge when I tell them my name. And now without a beer, I can see that happening more often. Jennifer, she went. I call my friend Jorge Prieto, Jorge o Prieto, because there is about 10% Irish on the DNA result he got back. That's funny. Then Yusha, yeah, my name is Yusha, which is derived from a Muslim prophet. In the biblical translation of it is Yusha, but again, oh Joshua. I'm not completely sure how I'm supposed to pronounce that one. It's not my name. Okay. Ravi. Oh, this is Yusha Connect. This is talking to Ravi now. I can relate to you on that because I am a Muslim who lived in Saudi Arabia most of my life, and you can only imagine what people think about that. I feel like there should be courses about world history and world cultures to sort this sort of ignorance. Everywhere I have traveled to, there is a course about the world and not just the one country like here in the USA. My country, we learn like international story like all throughout high school. Like we were forced to learn the story of other countries. I don't know if that's something that you do here, but yeah, we are. And also their geography. Jennifer, I don't like that some of my Muslim friends and classmates have felt they need to give their children white sounding American names because of the attitude of overly nationalistic people. Okay. And then Yusha asked to speak. So you're next.
It's all right. You can continue reading. One, we're short of time, and two, I forgot what I was going to talk about.
Oh, well, thank you, because there is a lot to read.
Yeah.
Sitting tight is just gonna get heated. Okay. All right. So, Ravi, mm, mm, mm. She said, Yusha, I definitely agree with you on highlighting the need for cross-cultural education. We say we're a melting pot, but what exactly are we melting into? If we, on the other hand, are a salad, then we need to get to know the different salad ingredients better. There you go. Pa, pa, pa. Then, Osita, he goes, is that based off the same Joshua that is in the Old Testament? Which Yusha responded, yeah, and I was looking into the melting pot. Oh, that's actually responding to Ravi. And history shows that the melting pot was almost entirely assimilation and never integration. Immigrants that came into the USA were forced to leave their culture and take over the American. It was the same with the Native Americans and them being Americanized. Then Jennifer, most of Mexican friends cheer for Team USA. Don't get me started. Oh my God. Then she continues, I am a member of the Dallas Guardians and American Outlaws. El Matador, the Spanish FC Dallas group, is full of Team USA supporters. Okay. Then Yusha did reply to Osita by saying, I'm not entirely sure, but if it is referring to Joshua, Moses' shepherd boy, then yeah. It is referenced in the Exodus, I believe. Then Jennifer continues, the women are picking up the slacks for our men's team. We need a few more policies. Yes, you do play good when it comes to female. That is it. I have 10% respect from the US team, and that's because I'm here. Ask me outside here, and I say zero. Zero. But I'm here, so yeah, 10%. I'm being generous. So then, Yusha, see the fact that people are calling it soccer now, even though they had been calling the sport football since the beginning. Which Ravi then says, I like that you mentioned survival. There really is what it is not trying to stick out like a sore thumb in order to get accepted into the wider community. It's complicated. I think there is an American culture probably based on values like hard work, innovation, tenacity, and friendliness. I just think that in being a part of the whole, we should not completely do away with the part of the whole that we are. I find that in other cultures, the pressure to morph into something else is not as intense. I see Italian Americans holding to their culture. Same goes for Jewish Americans, and I guess a few other examples. For others, however, they truly melt into the pot. I'm learning so much English right now. I can read so fast. This is great. Now, Jennifer, James Corden trying to get the USA to cheer for Team England during the World Cup was hilarious. There is a part where he tries to get one of the players to say soccer, and he won't do it. If you get bored, it's pretty good. And she shared a link on YouTube right there. You should check it out. I cannot do it right now. I need to continue reading. Then Osita, Ravi, I think we are melting into American culture, just like Anglo-Saxon, Briton, Celt, etc., eventually melting into what we call British culture. What you just said, I will surely check that out regarding the link. I need to make the specification. Then Ravi, Yusha, I did not know about the history behind the melting pot. That does make a lot of sense. I need to start making like an audiobook. I'm telling you, I'm into this. Now, Yusha, because American studies teach the founding of the Americans was all peachy and happy to go lucky. Okay, all right. LOL, LOL, LOL. That's three different people, by the way, just if you didn't pick it up. And Pamela, I have to get going, but it was nice being able to join you in a conversation. Stay safe, everyone. Then you said thank you for coming. LOL. Ha. There you go. Haha. So, yes, with that being said, oh, tehehehe, tehe. Ha, I read it nice. There was a T there in the middle, like kind of tricky. But yes, with that being said, that's the end of the chat. All right. So we are about, what, 22 minutes. Oh, hehe, ho, ho. Okay. So this is going to continue. I'm going to, I'm going to continue. I need to wrap up. This is the thing. So first and foremost, thank you so much, Chelsea, for being here. I hope that you were not taken away from so many laughing things and reading. This is how we roll. We're kind of like informal conversation, but we know what we're doing. It's fine. We do appreciate all your experiences and your knowledge put into it. It certainly was a great addition to the whole theme that we were rolling on, and that we all hopefully continue conversing on tomorrow's um, movie watch, whatever thing that we're going to be doing. I do feel like it is going to be a nice experience because it's a different type of movie. Thank you. I'm vouching for you right now. Yeah. So, I mean, it seems interesting, and I feel like there is a lot to say on those short vignettes. So yeah.
Yeah. So
Um,
so essentially, again, it's the focus is going to be on the relationship between two people of different cultures who are living in New York City. So again, a giant melting pot of a city, the capital of America, perhaps the capital of the world. At any rate, yeah, thank you to Alice for coming out. Thank you, Chelsea, for your wonderful perspective and for contributing. Thanks, Barbara from the Art Club, for coming out. Again, I do hope that everybody joins us tomorrow, 4:30. We'll begin the screening. It's again, it's something that I think would resonate with those who could attend. It is a series of vignettes about, again, two people coming together in a melting pot. So yeah, try to check it out. And if not, if you can't make it, please understand that just like this one, we'll be recording the conversations from that film series, PHILM, philosophy and film. Yeah, it'll be screening right here in Teams for who are just asked in the chat. And yeah, we'll be recording the conversations and posting them to Teams as well as YouTube. So you can go back if you have to leave the conversation earlier, you can't make it, but you want to hear what we talk about. Maybe you can go watch the vignettes on your own time. Again, they're just 15 minutes each. And I'll post the link to the films in the chat. But you can check it out there. And then, of course, once again, I strongly encourage anybody who wants to sort of dip their toes in academia and maybe present at an official academic conference for philosophy to submit an application. And again, it's very quick. Your presentation time is 15 minutes. So you'll present and then maybe take a question or two, and that'll be it. But it's great to put on your resume. There are very few opportunities for this kind of presentation at any college, much less, a community college. So it's rare. I recommend you take advantage of it. If you're curious as to what the conference will be like, distance-wise, find us on YouTube. We have a YouTube channel where we have uploaded last semester's conference. You don't have to watch all 7 hours, but at the same time, you can get a sense of just what it's like to present at a conference, given this kind of unique format. So I encourage your participation, or at the very least, just drop by. You can, it's an all-day affair. You can come, you can go, you can watch a couple of presentations and leave and come back. It's all good. And my students, if you attend, you get extra credit, of course. And if you present, you really get extra credit. All right.
Hey Manzi, we just had 2 questions. Where do we go to apply, and when is the deadline for the applications? Also, bless you, Chelsea.
Thank you.
Okay, great question. So again, if you happen to be a student of mine, or really if you're taking philosophy classes anywhere in Dallas College right now, the application should be posted in eCampus, and if not, it'll be posted very soon under extra credit opportunities. The other thing is this: if you want to apply right now, if you're hearing this, you're in our Teams page. So if you go to the top instead of chat, there's it says Files. Click on Files, and you can scroll down and find again the application for the 2021 Dallas College Philosophy Undergraduate Student Conference. It's a very simple application. There's maybe 3 steps to it, so nothing too complicated. And my phone is shutting down. Take care, everyone. It's overheating. Thanks for coming. I've been Professor Manzi.
Finally. Oh, so he's still there? Oh, oops. Oh. I mean, it's still recording, so whatever. All right. So, I mean, thank you so much, everyone, again. It was fun. Hopefully, I get to see most of you tomorrow. If not, well, until next week. For tomorrow's movie thing, it will be here, same channel, same Bati time. I don't know how it is. Like in Spanish, it's like Bati señal, like Bati time, like whatever. But yes, this will be here. Um, that's it. So I'm just gonna stop the recording. I don't think I'm forgetting anything. So yeah, thank you again. Boop.